Right. Many of you will be surprised tonight about the topic. We did begin a new series, a mini-series, about morality and bioethics. So what you would be expecting to hear is about topics that have to do with ethics or morals. Last week we spoke about the 7 Noahide laws, which in some ways is a universal code of ethics, of morals, of values. What I decided to do tonight is a topic that is related, a topic that I'm asked about many, many times. And I think it's a very, very important question. People have asked me more than once, is it possible to be an ethical person without believing in God? Have you heard this question? Some people claim they can. Some people complain, you don't need religion. You don't need to believe in a God to be a good person, a well-mannered person. Proper conduct is human nature, or is it? So that is part of the question. Is it possible? Nonetheless, we do know that there are many people around us that are not religious and nonetheless are honest. They conduct themselves properly, they make excellent husbands, good friends. And we wonder, what's the difference between them and some of those that we know to be religious who are not as honest? Is there something wrong here? Does religion have anything to do with it? It's a good question, right?
Yes.
And you'll be surprised by the answer. But for the answer, you have to wait till the end. We need to give a little bit of an introduction. Rabbis tell us in Birkei Avot, you may have heard, that in en Torah en derech eretz, in men derech eretz en Torah. What that means is that if there is no Torah, if one does not have the knowledge of the Torah, there cannot possibly be derech eretz, morals and ethics. So that is already telling us something. If there is no Torah, there cannot be derech eretz. And if there is no derech eretz, if there's no proper conduct, moral conduct, then there cannot be Torah. What did they mean by that? What they basically said is that without Torah, there can be no guarantee that the derech eretz, the proper conduct that an individual follows, will always be there. Why? Because he has no Torah. He has nothing that is showing him or that is reminding him, guiding him to differentiate between right and wrong. It's what he thinks, or it's what he was told, but it's not necessarily true. And it will not always necessarily be the case that what he did yesterday and the way he conducted himself a year ago, he will do so again in the future. I will elaborate a little bit more on this, what that means. But briefly and simplistically, that's what it means, that without Torah, there cannot be real derech eretz, real proper conduct. How about the other one? Without derech eretz, there is no Torah. That is a little bit easier to understand. Without proper conduct, that is indicative of an individual who, even though he did study and knows a lot, it's worthless. What good is all the knowledge if one does not conduct himself properly and ethically? So whatever he learned is valueless. In men derech eretz, if there's no proper conduct, then even if he did learn Torah, it's worthless. It is as though it does not exist. In addition to that, if you do see individuals who are not behaving themselves, it is also indicative that they're probably ignorant of Torah. It cannot be that one had really learned Torah properly and he has no proper conduct. But I'm going to come to that again, because we're going to ask a famous question that I've spoken about in the past. We all know people who are very learned, great scholars, who are corrupt, unfortunately. It has happened more than once in our history. Jewish and non-Jewish. Makes no difference. People who are very knowledgeable, wise, who have failed, who have made mistakes. Why? So even though I just said that Torah does help, it makes a difference, we will see that there's more to it. However, if you do see someone who does not conduct himself properly, then you may rightfully suspect that the Torah is definitely not there. So in order for us to understand really what the Torah does, what does it teach us? What is the difference between ethics, values, morals? These are all words that we hear. Is all of that in the Torah? Or is there something that we can pick up elsewhere? What exactly are we getting by believing in God? What is possible for us to get on our own? Or is it possible at all to get something, some kind of ethics or morality from society? Is it possible to pick up something that is really helpful? So what is the difference between values, ethics, and morals? I think the best way to describe them, even though they're very much synonymous, is that something that is dear to us, something that is correct, acceptable, necessary, and consistent with one's beliefs that influence our conduct. That's what these are. Morals, values, ethics. You can choose whichever word you want, even though there are some small nuances, there are some small differences between them, but that's more in how they are used. In society, you may hear ethics, you may hear morals, but pretty much they're all very similar. These are principles of beliefs, of proper conduct that are important to us, that we find necessary. What's the common denominator of all of them? The common denominator is that these principles or beliefs help us differentiate, supposedly, between that which is right and that which is wrong. Okay, where is everybody picking them up? Let's leave out the Torah for a minute. Where is everybody picking this up? Where are they learning them from? Well, some of them are derived from religion. Some of them are picked up from society. Society decides on certain things or what they consider right. And others stem from all kinds of philosophies, philosophical beliefs. Examples of them would be what? Honesty. What else? Compassion. Respect. Fairness. Self-control. There are quite a few. I could list more, but these are just examples of what pretty much humanity as a whole traditionally considered ethics and morals. There's no doubt that if people come together and agree on these morals, they can definitely help create a civilized society. There's no doubt whatsoever. The first problem that will occur, however, is that there will be conflicts between certain ethics and morals. Conflicts, and there are conflicts all the time. I'll share with you two examples that are pretty much famous, very well known, and it happens all the time. First example is, imagine an attorney, a defense attorney, who has to defend one who is accused of murdering someone. And this defense attorney, whose job is to defend the murderer, knows that he committed the murder. She or he knows that they killed, knows that they're guilty. So the attorney very much believes that a murderer deserves to be punished. That's what her morals tell her. That's what her values taught her. But what is the ethics here? The ethics of her job. She has to defend him, even though she knows the truth. Should she? Even though she knows the truth?
Yes.
Well, that's the question. Some say yes, some say no. How could she? if it's against what she believes in, against her morals, against everything she was taught, it's a dilemma. It's a problem. You see? Perhaps give the job to someone else. That's what some people do. That's how some attorneys have done. That is what they do. But it's not a simple matter. Another example, a famous one that happened years ago. There was a social worker that was helping an undocumented immigrant. And there was a problem in her offering help. This undocumented immigrant was suicidal, was very, very depressed, and was suicidal. But because that immigrant, undocumented immigrant, was undocumented, it was against the law for her to offer any counseling. And if she did, she would lose her job. And if she didn't counsel, and that undocumented immigrant would commit suicide, she would be harming a human being. You understand? A conflict between morality. You're hurting. You're indirectly causing someone's death. She would possibly be very successful in counseling that individual. On the other hand, work ethics, undocumented. You can't do it. Just give you two examples. So what do? Rabbis tell us, let's assume we did not have a Torah. Can the human being figure out on his own certain ethics that will be good all the time? So the rabbis tell us, yes. Certain things he could learn from animals. He could learn modesty from the cat. You will not see a male and female cat together, copulating. They're very modest. You will learn chastity or fidelity from the doves. Partners for life, right? You could learn to stay away, to have an aversion for theft. From who? From the ant. An ant works very hard to take that grain that she finds and to put it away. And if she drops it, another ant will not take it. It is a known thing that ants don't steal from each other. They work together, actually. They work for a common cause. The rabbis tell us if we had no Torah, we would learn from animals. There is what to learn. But my question is, wait a minute. Why only from animals? Can't the human being on his own figure out right from wrong? Does he have to just learn it from animals? If we had no Torah, no guidance from above, we would not be able to figure this out on our own. I would say yes, man can figure out certain things on his own because there's something called conscience. You've heard of it? Mm-hmm. Our conscience tells us, doesn't it? If something is right or something doesn't feel right. What's conscience? Conscience comes from the soul. A human being is endowed with a divine soul. So imagine an embedded chip, a computer chip, in the human being that knows the basics. Just basics. Don't steal, don't kill. These are basics. The fact that most of humanity agrees on the basics tells you what? That all of these characteristics, all of these values or ethics are innate in our nature. Somehow, in the subconscious mind, our soul communicates to us the basics of what is right and what is wrong. So wait a minute, so why don't the rabbis point that out? That if we had no Torah, we would figure this out on our own. There's something called conscience. And conscience will tell us right from wrong. However, it's not so simple. Within the human being, there's conflicts. Did you know that? What conflict? there are two opposing forces at all times. The Yetzer Tov, the good and positive inclination, is that force that is pushing us, encouraging us to do the right thing. But there is an opposing force, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, that opposes the positive inclination, says, no, you come first. So because of this internal conflict, constant conflict between these opposing forces within the human being, he cannot always make a clear decision as to what he should do. What happens, however, is that the odds are against the individual making the right decision. Had they both been equal, 50-50, maybe at least some of the time we would do the right thing. It turns out that the odds are against us. The rabbis explain that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is older than the good inclination. The evil inclination arrives at the time of birth. Haven't you seen little children fight? They want everything for themselves. It takes time until the child matures. That is when the Yetzer Tov, the positive inclination, arrives. For the Jewish people, as you know, the tradition is that that stage is at the age of 13 for the boy and 12 for the girl, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. That is the age that they tell us is when a child enters adolescence. He's able to make decisions. He's more mature. He could not have had the two earlier on because he would have a very difficult time. He cannot make decisions at the age of 6 or 7. He cannot have this conflict early on. It's only when the mind matures that this additional power within the soul can be expressed to enable him to make the proper decision. He still needs guidance, but at least he's able to reflect, at least he's able to think, at least he's able to weigh things, and hopefully to be a fair referee in deciding who's right and who's wrong. What do you say? What do you say? You know, he's always going to hear the two sides, hopefully. Hopefully, I say, because some people only hear one side, the wrong side. But if he hears both sides, if he's mature enough, he's somewhat knowledgeable, he may be able to make the right decision. But as we said, the odds are against him. Why are the odds against him? Not only because the evil inclination is older and there all the time, and in some ways is more powerful than the positive inclination, there's also the environment. The rabbis tell us that one of the most powerful influences over the human being that affects his decisions on how he lives his life is the environment. People, society. People are influenced by others. They follow them. Even though they didn't agree at once. Look at the power of style. The style. The latest style. People somehow feel they have to follow it blindly. Accent. You can recognize an accent from another city. I mean, if you're familiar with that accent, why is there such a thing as an accent? People live in a different part of the country, or in a different country altogether. They develop different accents, different mentality. They are affected by their surroundings. The surroundings, the environment is very, very powerful. The human being, therefore, as smart as he may be, cannot always decide for himself, because it may not be that he is deciding on his own. It could be something else that is pushing him to decide. It could be some kind of pressure from the surroundings, whether it's family, relatives, friends, or just society. Most people are not strong enough to rebel against the norms, to be different. Most people know they cannot do that. They're not strong enough. They just go with the flow, even if it's wrong. So you see why it's not so simple. Man, yes, is endowed with certain abilities. He may be able to recognize many times right from wrong. He doesn't know it all, but he knows the basics. He has a soul. He has a conscience. But there are other factors, other influences that will get in the way. It doesn't end here. Then you have human beings who are so evil, who want to oppose conscience. You remember one? Hitler. Let me read to you what he says, and you'll understand. It's incredible that someone can actually say that. It says, Providence has ordained that I should be the greatest liberator of humanity. I am freeing man from the restraints of an intelligence that has taken charge, from the dirty and degrading self-mortification of a false vision called conscience and morality. I don't want it, he says. I don't believe in it. Let's get rid of it. Well, wait a minute. Doesn't everybody have conscience and morality? He says, no, the Jews made it up. And let me quote to you. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It's a blemish, just like the circumcision. Incredible. By the way, you know where this is coming from? How could somebody think of something like that? This is the power of Amalek. I have a whole lecture just about Amalek. What is Amalek? Who is Amalek? What do they represent? The philosophy of a nation called Amalek, which is the exact opposite philosophy of Judaism, of God. The exact opposite. So if you want to become a little bit more familiar as to what they preach, just hear that lecture about Amalek. But here, you see it so clearly. It's so incredible. Every time I read it, I say to myself, I haven't heard too many human beings say something like that. Where does he know this from? How did he get to this? How did he think of something like that? But that's the power of Amalek. The one who's not Amalek would not say this. To say something exactly contrary to conscience and morality, which the majority of the world accepts, can only be Amalek. Wow, incredible. Then he says as follows. In nature, there is no pity for the lesser creatures when they are destroyed, so that the fittest may survive. Does that sound familiar? That the fittest may survive? Evolution. It is only Jewish impudence, in other words, chutzpah, to demand that we overcome nature. It's only Jewish impudence to overcome nature. I thought it was a good thing to control yourself. No. He believes that the human being is just another animal. That's what this is. It's just incredible. Okay, then you may say, but wait a minute. The average human being maybe does not know right from wrong. Maybe he will be influenced by his environment. But what about all the knowledgeable people? What about the philosophers? They should know, right? Maybe there should be a committee of philosophers, of great wise men, that they should come up with a set of rules, morals, ethics for humanity. Why isn't that possible? So let me quote to you what a philosopher, famous philosopher said. I think it was René Descartes. The greatest minds are capable of the greatest vices as well as the greatest virtues. I think they say that about Socrates, that he was once caught doing something very, very not appropriate. And he says, well, now I'm Socrates the man, not Socrates the philosopher. Hypocrisy. So a great mind is not a guarantee either that he will conduct himself properly. I've been asked more than once, how come this scholar, this intelligent man, committed such a sin? He has a long beard. How could he do it? I said, what does a long beard have to do with it? A goat also has a beard. You think the beard will protect one? For many, it's just a disguise. A person can be a scholar. A person can be wise. He can have a beard. I mean, all of this will not help him. Human beings are half animals. That's a fact. But we do have a soul. We don't always listen to the soul. So can human beings really put together something that will work for all times, all generations? Not so simple. I have not told you yet the answer to my original question. Can someone be ethical, even without the belief in God? We have not gotten to that point yet. What I'm trying to do right now is just show the difficulties for the human being on his own to figure out right from wrong, to point out man's weaknesses, and how even if he's wise and knowledgeable, he can succumb to his evil inclination, as many have, unfortunately. And there's evil too. There's evil out there that is opposed to anything that is conscience. And there has been evil all the time. Because the human being can be evil. He has that power. He may choose not to listen to the other, more positive inclination that tells him, do the right thing. We have free will. Then you have a lot of atheists who complain about this too. And they come up with all kinds of reports and studies that, if you look at history, they say, it is the fanatics, the religious, who have committed so many crimes. How could that be? Obviously, this religion didn't help them. If anything, it made things worse for them. First of all, it's totally not true. You can go to Bnei Brak in Israel and see a wonderful little community. It's not so little, I think it's over 100,000 inhabitants, where there's barely any crime. The majority of them are religious. Beautiful place. It's a little crowded. But there's barely any crime. So it's not exactly accurate. But they do have a point. Religion is not a guarantee that people will conduct themselves properly. But let me tell you what the real facts are behind all the wars, all the troubles of the past committed by those who claim that it's in the name of religion. It's not their religion so much, it's not their beliefs per se, even though sometimes it is a belief. Most of the time when religious people commit crimes in the name of God, it is because of them. It is the human being behind the problem. It is not his faith. It is not the religion. Human beings can be barbaric. Human beings can be fanatics. Human beings can be incited by bishops or other religious leaders who have hatred towards a group of people. Who's leading them on? Who is igniting the match, the fire here? Who's causing it? It's not the religion per se, even though sometimes it is a belief, a wrong belief, of course, that's causing this mutiny. But the pogroms, if you look throughout Jewish history, all the pogroms, the persecutions, the inquisitions, all of that was not so much that they had something against our faith. It was people who were not civilized, not cultured, or totally ignorant. Recently, we've also seen an example of people who are very upset at a particular group because of economics. It's their fault. They're causing the depression. Or they're the bankers, they're the rich, and they're taking all our money. Economics. So sometimes you see that there are other factors that is causing these people to come out and kill. So even though they may be religious, it's not their religion, it's not their belief per se. There's something else that's bringing it out. Many times they're being incited. Incitement is throughout history, you see it. But who can be incited? Who can be someone that will allow himself to be incited? Only someone who's ignorant. And let me quote to you a very important quote about this. I saw, this is a philosopher, I think she's still alive, and she's 100% right. And that is why I want to share it with you, what she says. Martha Nussbaum is her name. Knowledge is no guarantee of good behavior, but ignorance is a virtual guarantee of bad behavior. Ignorance? That is the cause, or one of the main causes, of why people have done what they've done. It's not necessarily their beliefs, their religion. It would be wrong to accuse religion of all those wrong deeds perpetrated by all kinds of peoples, all kinds of religions. So now we've come to the question, okay, if that's the case, that the human being is not capable on his own to figure out right from wrong with certainty and succeed, then how could belief in God help? The rabbis tell us in the Mishnah, which is part of the Talmud, as follows. There are certain animals that if you want to keep them as pets, you're going to be liable 100% for any damages that will occur as a result of them hurting someone, because these are wild animals, as opposed to domesticated animals like cats and dogs, or even a bull. The first time, second time, they're not expected necessarily to go and hurt someone unless you start up with them. Some animals are tame, some animals are wild. If you keep a wild animal, you're going to have to pay complete damages for whatever they did. Examples of those wild animals: a bear, a leopard, a lion, a wolf, a snake. The rabbis tell us that these are wild animals. If you keep them as pets, you're going to be completely liable for damages that they cause. What are the rabbis trying to tell us here? A wild animal can be trained. We've seen that in circuses. But a wild animal cannot be tamed. You know the difference between to tame and to train? To train? Yes. But is there any guarantee that that cute teddy bear is not going to hurt someone? No guarantee. And we've heard many, many such stories of wild animals. They're wild. Their nature is wild. That they even hurt their own trainer. No guarantee. So yes, you can train them, but you cannot tame them. And that's a very important point. Getting back to our original question, what the rabbis tell us, that if there's no Torah, there can be no guarantee for proper conduct. It's because of this. A human being can be trained, could be decent, could be nice, could behave himself, but is there a guarantee that he won't turn against you, that he won't stick a knife behind your back? No, there's no guarantee. There's nothing anchoring him down, restraining him. Faith in God is an anchor. Is it a guarantee? Also not 100%, but it helps. So people, of course, people can be very nice, people can be ethical, people can conduct themselves morally, but is there any guarantee? No. If there is faith in God, there's more of a guarantee. Not 100%, but there's more of a guarantee because there's an anchor. He's accountable for his actions. It puts some fear into his mind. Some fear. It's some deterrent. That's the difference. Without Torah, there's no guarantee that that moral conduct that you see in an individual will be there, depending on the circumstances. What if the bribe is very, very big bribe? It's a very big bribe. He may take it. But I thought he was an upright person. How could he take a bribe? Well, if it's a lot of money, a lot of people would take it. Money, they say, money talks. Yeah? Somehow it's powerful. It blinds people. As the Torah says, it will blind even the righteous. So without Torah, without the fear of God, without the faith in God, it's much more difficult. The Torah also gives us clarity as to what is right and what is wrong. If you ask somebody what is good, what in your opinion is good? How do you define good? What would you answer? Everybody will say something else. You know why? Because good is something relative. What is good for you is not necessarily good for me. What is good for me is not necessarily good for you. Some people like peanut butter and jelly. I'm told in this country, in America, it's a very, common and
it's a staple.
And a staple
They call it a staple.
sandwich. When I saw it the first time, I said, wow, two opposites, peanut butter and jelly? And then they started putting celery in the tuna fish. I said, what? So, they like it, they enjoy it. It depends what you get used to, In Mexico, we put chile and salt on fruit. And when I do that, people say, what's that? It's what you get used to. Yeah, it's actually very tasty, certain vegetables. Good and bad is in the eyes of the beholder, like beauty, right? It's relative. Is there an absolute good? The answer is yes. What Hashem says, what God says is good. God reveals to us in the beginning of Genesis, of Bereshit, what is good. After creating the world, after most of the creation, he says, you know what, this is good. Why is he telling us that this is good? What's the message? If God says something is good, it means three things. Number one, that it's complete. It's not lacking, it's complete. That is why by man he didn't say it's good, because he's not complete. It's complete, it's necessary, and it serves the ultimate purpose for why he created the world. But man is not complete. That's why by him he doesn't say good. But cockroaches are good. Because why? There's apparently some need, otherwise he wouldn't create them. Complete, there's a need for them, but number three is the more important one. They serve an ultimate purpose. They serve the purpose for which the world was created. Something that does not serve that purpose is not good. Something that leads to that purpose, something that is done for that higher cause, is good. If it's not done for that, be suspicious of it. It may not be good. That is how we know. Without the Torah, without those instructions, we could not know what is good and what is bad, because it is something relative. He says it's bad. I don't think it's so bad. He says it's good. Well, I disagree. Human beings cannot agree on everything.
Right.
So something as important as right and wrong, good and bad, I better get it from my higher source. Therefore, belief in God, the study of Torah, is important because it is a guide. It helps us understand what needs to be done. It helps us prioritize everything in life. It gives us more clarity. Without that, it is possible to be an ethical person, a good person, but it is more difficult. There are many challenges, and who's to guarantee that in this particular challenge, that ethical individual will do well? He may fail. He has no direction. He has no anchor, no fear of God. He may not know 100%. He has a conflict with the work ethics. You see what I mean? It will be more difficult for him to decide what to do. Even if someone is ethical, who's to say that he can give over all that character that he has to his children? Just because it is his son, does that mean like father, like son? Not always. Sometimes yes. Sometimes a parent is a good example, but there's no guarantee. So just because you're an ethical person, that's very nice of you. But will that work for your child? Not necessarily. We need a higher source to guide us. The parent, as instrumental as he may be, and their parents are very instrumental, very important, they cannot give over everything. And one individual, as ethical as he may be, cannot influence an entire world. So yes, there will be, and there has been, good people all the time without religion. Have they had a lot of impact on the world? A little bit perhaps. Some achievements, a good name and reputation. Did they change the world? Did they stop major wars? No. So what good is it? It's good for yourself, definitely. Be a good person, but it won't go too far. Without the faith in God, without believing in a higher source, it will be much more challenging for the individual and to give over his message to others. Others may tell him, listen, you be that way, you act that way, but we don't want to be like you. You know. Now, governments have another problem. Governments are not consistent. We have Republicans, then we have Democrats, and Republicans and Democrats. There's always a change. People change, opinions change, human beings change, times change. And one commentary, rabbinic commentary, explains that is the reason why nations, empires collapsed. They were around for 200 years. What exactly went wrong? Why did the Greeks continue to be a Greek empire? What happened to the Persian Empire? What happened to the Babylonian? What exactly brought them down? A lack of consistency. I mean, there's other reasons too. No consistency. One king came with his ideas, the other one came after him and completely obliterated the one who was before him, maybe even assassinated him, right? Took over and decided on a new law. This is besides the corruption that went on all along. No consistency. No real morals. And that is why they couldn't last. Remember Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe? He gave him good advice. He says, listen, you're going to be choosing judges now. You're going to having a government, right? You're going to have people who are going to be elected, chosen for a very important job, to judge. You know what a judge is? Be careful who you choose to judge. They have to have the following qualities. First of all, anshe chayil, fearless of human beings. Fearless of human beings. Senators and congressmen have fear. They want to be reelected. Someone who's going to be judging has to be fearless, not affected by what others are going to say. Condition number 2, the most important condition, Yireh Elokim, God-fearing. You're accountable to Him. That's what matters the most. And number 3, Sonei Batza. They detest anything that has to do with money. They couldn't care less about it. They don't want to look at the money. They're not interested about the money. Money does not have any influence whatsoever over them. How many people that you know in positions of power have these 3 characteristics? Don't like money? It's a problem. You know why it's a problem? Because if somebody likes money, and he likes the power, and he likes the position that he's in, he wants to be reelected, that is an excellent recipe for corruption. Loving money and loving power? Afraid of human beings and not afraid of God? That is what you have all the time, everywhere. Very few people are truly honest, righteous, couldn't care less about the money, don't even want to take the salary of the job, just care about what is best for the people. Very few. Why? Why very few? Because of what we said before. The odds are against the human being. There is a powerful influence out there. Within him, the evil inclination. Outside of him, society as a whole. And On top of that, today, in our times, we have also scientific progress. And you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, what's wrong with scientific progress? What does that have to do with that? Well, I have another quote for that too. This is also a very nice quote, and very, very true. And this one comes from Madame Stahl, a French intellectual woman. I think she lived about 250 years ago. And she said like this: scientific progress makes moral progress a necessity. For if man's power is increased, the checks that restrain him from abusing it must be strengthened. The more power people have, today there's more power than in the past. They need greater restraints. The challenges are greater than they were in the past. So what are we left with? We're left with faith in God. Faith in God is helpful because it could guide us. Even though it can guide us, we said it's not a guarantee. So what is necessary along with faith in God is for one to work on his midot, for one to work on his character. Character refinement, which there's a whole series of lectures about that. Character refinement is what shlemut is all about. Shlemut means that the human being is told in the Torah to complete himself. He was created in an incomplete state. It's your job to refine your character. It's your job to elevate yourself, to control yourself. Don't be a slave of that evil inclination. Be the master. You can do it, but you cannot do it successfully without direction, without the fear of God. Some people are fine. They may be not as, they may not have all the challenges that others have. People who are temperamental, lazy, and stingy have greater challenges than those who are just nice people by nature. They're giving. They're patient. They're tolerant. They smile. They have a happy, good disposition. Good people. A lot depends on your nature. So if one's nature, as it is docile, is that how you pronounce it? Docile, right? If one's nature is just soft and gentle, some of the challenges and temptations that exist out there will not affect him, will not bother him, will not entice him. Could you imagine somebody that has all the vices? I don't know too many that have all the vices. God forbid that would be a terrible thing. But people have weaknesses. And for one on his own to be able to control himself, he can do it. But there's no guarantee of what will happen the following day, what will happen 10 years from now, depending on the challenges. We're only human. The odds are against us, especially in difficult situations, unless we have something to anchor us. And that anchor is the fear of God. But even that is not a guarantee. One has to work on his midot. There's no exception to that. That is imperative. Without that, one has continuous challenges and struggles throughout his life. Continuous struggles. He may have a difficult marriage, a difficult relationship because of some characteristic, some flaw, some weakness, unless he works on himself. Not everybody wants to work on himself. And what about the ones who are against the conscience? They're saying that that's the way it should be, that you don't have to control your nature. You're just an animal? Then of course, they're never going to do anything about it. On the contrary, they will have no respect for other people either. They'll treat them like animals, which is exactly what happened in World War II. This is exactly what happened throughout our history, the history of mankind. The human being, because he's an animal, if he does not control himself, if he does not realize that he has a soul, a divine soul within him, that is guiding him, at least with the basics, if he doesn't pay attention to that soul, and he just follows his instinct, that instinct is animal. Then what could you expect? Instincts are animal, whereas conscience is something spiritual. Conscience comes from the soul. In order for us to be able to have the strength to do battle with the evil inclination and to listen more carefully to what the conscience says, it helps a lot if one has the fear of God. Therefore, the Torah very, very much encourages the Jew and the non-Jew to always aspire to perfect himself. That should be the goal of mankind. Refine your character, perfect your relationship, become a better person. And if you have the faith in God, then that B'ezrat Hashem will help you. Amen.